Brian Foster, and this is the Grindhouse Institute. On each episode of this podcast, Jeremy Floyd and I program a double or triple feature movie night. Each of the movies share common themes, and we discuss them here. We're happy you could join us for today's episode we call Home Invasion Thrillers. In this episode, the Grindhouse Institute delves fearlessly into the uncharted territories of our own homes, shattering the illusion of safety with a trio of cinematic thrillers that will redefine the very notion of sanctuary. From the big city to the burbs to the serene countryside, we prove that no home is impervious to invaders as we explore this subgenre of the thriller. An insidious mastermind enlists the aid of two henchmen to target an innocent blind woman guarding an elusive doll hiding a valuable secret. The thieves deploy an arsenal of elaborate schemes masquerading behind an array of phony stories and disguises. Will she let them get the best of her, or will she turn the tables on the intruders? Audrey Hepburn, Alan Arkin, and Richard Crenna star in Terrence Young's 1967 film, Wait Until Dark. Professor David Sumner takes a sabbatical in the English countryside with his wife Amy. Some time away from home will be the perfect place for David to write his paper and for the two of them to repair their relationship. Hey, it worked wonders for the Torrance family. Unfortunately, this little village is the Mose Eisley of the English countryside. A bone-chilling horde of ghoulish marauders are unleashed on the Sumner family in this unblinking study of violence and cruelty. Dustin Hoffman, Susan George, and David Warner star in Sam Peckinpah's Straw Dogs from 1971. The fate of a photographer and a 14-year-old girl intertwine as they meet in a coffee shop after weeks of instant messaging and flirtatious internet conversations. Yet what starts as a disturbing first date ends in a chilling descent into a premeditated, sinister plan. A series of brutal interrogations and psychological torture ensues, but is this violence justified? Patrick Wilson, Elliot Page, and Sandra Oh star in David Slade's Hard Candy from 2005. Thank you for listening to the Grindhouse Institute. Please enjoy.
Now, Lisa will pay you $2,000 each for a couple hours' work. Interested?
What kind of work?
Finding Lisa's doll.
Are you serious?
I am.
What kind of doll?
An ordinary doll, a child's doll.
What's in it?
Remember when I took care of you, Amy?
But you didn't. Remember?
There was once a time, Mrs. Sumner, when you were ready to beg me for it.
Take your hands off me.
My dad, he's letting me audit one of his med school courses, right?
What, so you go to UCW and you sit in the lecture hall with all these grad students and what, do they hit on you?
Why, are you jealous?
I'm just admiring. I didn't know you're interested in that kind of thing.
All right, welcome back to the Grindhouse Institute. I'm Brian Foster, and with me as always is Jeremy Floyd. Hello, and how are you?
Ooh, I'm feeling safe because I'm at home. I'm indoors, and nothing could possibly go wrong.
Stay safe, my man, because today we are talking home invasion films. These are not the feel-good films or the mood lifters that you're expecting from our podcast, so please watch with caution. Today we have a very special guest talking these home invasion films with us. Jeremy, if you could please do the introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is actually one of our guest-programmed shows. I'm excited to have on comedian and now film reviewer, Chris Chaisson.
What's up? Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining, and thank you for kind of ruining my sleep for the last couple nights by suggesting these films. I really appreciate it.
Well, hey, hopefully it's a how-to survival guide. You know?
Yeah.
We'll look at it that way. This is what not to do,
Yeah.
or how to survive. Yeah.
Yeah, how to do things differently. Yeah, it's funny because, what I was talking to Chris, I don't know, a couple weeks ago about doing a show, and was kind of just like batting around ideas with him, and, home invasion subgenre of thrillers was one of the things that kind of interested you. So how did these movies come together, Chris?
I've always found these scarier than just straight horror movies.
Agreed.
They're so just I I don't know. They all feel like they could happen.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
As opposed to like monster movies or kind of demonic possession movies. These are like
a lot more familiar with this one.
Evil Dead. This is not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like you associate your house with like comfort and safety in them. So all these movies feel kind of realistic.
Well, I think what's interesting is the movies you chose, and we were discussing this over text, were some in the country, some in the city, some in the burbs. So you're not safe anywhere at home, according to these films, which even furthers the dread, in my opinion. We are talking today Wait Until Dark from 1967, Straw Dogs from 1971, and Hard Candy from 2005. Quite a list here. Yeah, we could start with Wait Until Dark, gentlemen. Let's get into it.
Well, what was interesting about this one, at least for those who've been following along and watching every single movie that we watch, if you end up watching Wait Until Dark, especially the opening, will kind of remind you of Stone Cold Dead, our Canadian thriller.
Totally. It starts in Toronto, right?
It definitely starts in Canada.
Montreal, maybe?
Drugs are coming from Montreal.
Right.
And it has Richard Crenna. Drugs were also coming from Montreal in Stone Cold Dead with Richard Crenna.
Right.
And both movies featured a home darkroom, which is interesting.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Weird set of little connections there.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, with the Sin Sniper.
Yeah. But with this movie, we have I didn't realize this until we were like 3/4 of the way through the movie, and I was like, man, this could be a stage play, and then like looked it up and was like, oh yeah, it was a stage play.
Definitely feels that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has this aside from the sort of table setting montage in the beginning where we're seeing the doll being sewn up with drugs and like the person
and the airport
customs and all that stuff. It mostly takes place in this New York apartment. Were they in New York?
Yeah, Brownstone, New York.
Yeah, Audrey Hepburn has kind of this basement level apartment. And
garden.
A constant stream of different visitors,
and no lock on this door apparently, because everyone could get in and out of that place real easy.
Yeah.
I guess that's what the stage play part of it is, right? They just kind of come in from off camera and ta-da! Yeah.
Exactly.
But this isn't the first time we've had a thriller where the main character, or at least one of the main characters, is a blind person living in a home. We also watched Don't Breathe, if you know that one, with Stephen Lang.
I think that was one of the ones that we had maybe talked about kind of back and forth, Chris. And I was like, yeah, well, we already did that one. But that was also Home Invasion.
Actually, Don't Breathe is one of the lines that Alan Arkin says to both Richard Crenna and the other fellow I'm blanking on the name of.
Because right when she walks in, that they're all trying to hide.
Don't breathe.
Because Audrey Hepburn can't see, and they're hoping that she won't notice them behind the door or in the closet or just in the middle of the living room.
Or the smell of the rotting dead body in the closet.
She does have significantly less combat training than the blind guy. And
that's true.
would have been a much shorter movie if she
killed all
with a weird twist.
First sight, exactly, or first smell. I don't know.
At first sound.
Sniff.
At first sniff. You brought up that this was a play. The character that Hepburn plays was actually played by Lee Remick, who was the mother in The Omen. So a year before that. I thought that was an interesting little tidbit.
Stay dead still. She's alone. Don't breathe.
How wild was some of the cast in this? I mean, I you just felt like everybody was really bringing it. Even like it's always harder with little kids and stuff, but even the younger
she was
girl,
great.
What was her name? Gloria.
Gloria, yeah.
And Alan Arkin got to be a master of disguise.
That was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
He just kept coming in with different hairstyles, and he plays a good villain. And I don't remember exactly when. I'm blanking on the name of the movie. The buddy cop film with him and James Caan.
Oh, yeah. God, what the hell?
I keep wanting to say Starsky and Hutch.
No, it was
Pork and Beans.
It was Frankie and the Bean or something.
Frankie and the Bean, yeah. I kept thinking back because he had that same look that he had in that movie.
Freebie and the Bean. Sorry, Freebie and the Bean.
Freebie and the Bean.
Yeah.
But he was definitely not that comedic of a character in this. He was a stone cold killer, for sure.
That was wild to see him play against type in that way. I guess, he's comedian or comic actor usually. Yeah.
But
not in this one. Especially toward the end there, he was pretty scary as he was hunting down Audrey Hepburn in the dark.
Yeah, I thought that was a great scene. I mean, we could go right to that. I thought that there was a lot of stuff that was interesting from the coverage and the lighting and everything that they used in the movie. It really made it terrifying. The fact that they used the refrigerator light as the only source of light in the house at one point, I thought was really interesting.
Well, and it was a cool device because you see on her face that she hears the buzz of like the
defroster
and the defroster in the refrigerator, and then she's all of a sudden scared because she went around the house taking out all the bulbs or smashing them or whatever, so that she'd have the advantage, but she forgot one bulb in the refrigerator. Oh no. And
all he needed to do was put a towel in between the door and the refrigerator to keep it so she couldn't close it. I thought that was really smart, from a writing standpoint.
No, I loved a lot of I loved a lot of the details in that sense, like how he found a way to wedge that thing open, and it was something like, story-wise they thought out, and it was, he just grabbed a kitchen towel and jammed it in there so that he could move around.
Yeah. Reminded me a little of Rear Window, at the end of Rear Window.
Yeah.
Say something. Tell me what you want.
I mean, I'm sure a lot of that stuff was in the stage play, but I think Terrence Young, who directed this, I think that he kind of brought a lot of, I guess his techniques that he got in the James Bond films to this one, there's a lot of interesting coverage in this, a lot of stylized kind of angles and lighting, a lot of reveals. The reveal of the dead person that we see at the beginning that was carrying the doll. Honestly, I kind of jumped a mile because the way that they reveal her is Krenna's going through the closet, and then all of a sudden she's right there behind him.
And he doesn't even see her.
Yeah. I was like, whoa. Just a blue girl in a bag.
For reference, I mean, Terrence Young, I mean, he directed a grip of the early Bond movies. I think it was
Dr. No from Russia with Love.
Mm-hmm. Thunderball, maybe?
Yes, and Thunderball.
Yeah. I don't know. It feels like because it was such a contained location, this was maybe a smaller movie, but, Audrey Hepburn, the director of the successful James Bond franchise, it seems like, maybe they had a budget for this one.
Is $3 million a big budget in 1967? It seems like it would be.
No idea.
I have no idea either. Yeah.
What did From Russia with Love cost? Let's say that was $2 million. So yeah.
There you go.
It cost more than that movie.
Yeah. But interestingly, she didn't act in anything for quite a while after this. It was actually quite a bit. She took a break, even though I think she was nominated for this film for an Oscar.
Yeah, I mean that was part of the when we were kind of going through some of the possibilities for this episode. I this one kind of stood out to me because I was like, okay, Audrey Hepburn got a Academy Award nomination. I guess the ending scene was it was one of those things on the AFI lists, and it's kind of a well-regarded scene in that sense.
It's number 10 on Bravo's 100 Scariest Movie Moments for that show that was on in the 2000s, which I could not believe. I used to love that show. Yeah. I mean, that's a big list.
Yeah. Michael Ian Black, I love the 60s. I don't know.
Yeah. I guess if you ever need someone to talk about movies or anything pop culture, you need to put Michael Ian Black in there, right? He's pretty good at that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to wear flannel. We're going to talk about our feelings, but we're still going to rock, and we're still going to get laid.
And obviously the movie was influential in a lot of things. I mean, we already mentioned
Don't Breathe.
And I'm sure that the idea was like, well, what if Audrey Hepburn could kick some ass?
Could kick the ass. Yeah, cook their asses, exactly.
That was the pitch or whatever, It's like...
She got in a lucky stab in this one, but if she was Stephen Lang or had the skills of Stephen Lang, those guys would be decapitated and hanging out the windows, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But a weird connection, aside from the very obscure connection of Stone Cold Dead, was in that sort of opening montage before we get set in the apartment. As we're going from airport to airport, and it's still in the opening credits phase, and we're just kind of seeing these like images of the woman sort of walking around with the doll. The music in that moment definitely sounds like the music that was in the Limey. And what's weird is like the score for this one, I mean, it had to have influenced that. And it's like, it was just so similar. So what you're hearing right now is Wait Until Dark. And what you're hearing now is the Limey. Coming. You tell me if it was influenced or not.
Was this the Henry Mancini score you're talking about here?
Yeah. Exactly.
Did he also do the Limey?
He did not. I think Cliff Martinez did the Limey.
There you go.
But yeah, that was another thing that, like, Henry Mancini, I think most people probably know him from like the Pink Panther theme or something like that. Yeah, like he definitely had like a real swinging sound of the 60s. And this one, like, you know, it was definitely a lot more tense. And,
sure.
You know, not as playful as, you know, Charade or, you know, Shot in the Dark or something like that.
Goes to show you that a good composer is going to write the music for the script. And I think he succeeded with this one. This one's got a really good score.
Or he did it a couple times.
Yeah.
Exactly.
First time he was like, this is way too swingy. She's getting attacked by
Bring down the swang.
Yeah. Did you even watch the movie, Henry?
So, Chris, what did you think from a reviewer's perspective, I would say? You know, what did you think of this film? I don't know how you review. I haven't checked out your site yet, but I mean, is it stars? Is it thumbs up? Is it however you do that? Like, what would you give this on your scale?
Oh, I give it a thumbs up just because, I mean, you know, to add to the element of how, you know, scary these movies can be, you know, imagine not being able to see. One thing I didn't really get is why not just give up the doll? But I guess, you know, if she's at risk of being, I guess maybe that's her only leverage. But
it's a bit of a plot hole, I'd say.
Yeah. I mean, maybe earliest. Now I'm having a hard time remembering the escalation of things, but like, you know, because Richard Crenna comes in and pretends to be
a friend of her husband.
Yeah, like an old army buddy of her husband, and like
Mr. Sam, I think it was, right?
Yeah.
It was just Sam, yeah.
Sam, and
Sam, yeah.
And I was actually doing my best Lord of the Rings impression there.
It was good.
Yeah,
it was really good. I knew it exactly. Yeah.
He didn't come outright and ask for it right away. I think it was something about maybe the skeezier, you know, guy playing the detective.
The guy that was in Short Circuit 2. The bad guy from Short Circuit 2.
Yeah, you got me there. I don't think I ever watched the sequel to that one. You know me, I'm not a sequel guy.
No, I know. I was going to say you'd hate it, but only because it's got a 2 at the end of it. Yeah.
But
his name's Jack Weston. We should
on
pay some tribute. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they kept calling him Sergeant or something, and he was like, "Quit calling me
Don't
that."
call me that. Yeah. So was he a cop at one point? Is that what we were trying to get out of that?
I think that was what was being hinted at, is that he was like a, you know, disgraced cop or something.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it is funny. I can't remember when she decides to like give up the doll, like, but she tells Richard Crenna when she still thinks he's on her side. But anyway, yeah, it is funny because it's like, you're right. At a certain point, she felt that was the only thing that was keeping her alive, essentially.
Yeah,
like
exactly. That's kind of what I got out of it too. It's like my one piece of leverage to keep these guys off my ass or whatever the hell is going on. But she didn't really know what was. She finally found out there was going to be danger headed her way, but I don't think she knew that right off the bat, because she thought that she was talking to some older guy that just ran in and stole a picture from her that she didn't even realize. She thought she was talking to a cop. And she thought she was talking to a best friend or an old war buddy or however that worked out, right? So it was like, what an elaborate con these guys tried to pull, you know, with disguises and everything, you know.
Well, what's kind of cool is like it. I think, and this one kind of maybe ties into Hard Candy too, but it's like, you know, it mostly operates as sort of a con movie.
Yeah.
But it is also a home invasion and under siege type thriller as well.
I just want to know more of the backstory of the old man that was sewing up the heroin inside the doll, because he's just was he just a seamster, you know, like, and he just would help them out. He's like, oh, we've got another doll here, more heroin. Let me just get this going.
Yeah.
Give me the maybe that's Stephen Lang, you know?
Yeah.
It seemed like another example of a movie though where villains fail just because they want to like fuck with the victim for so long.
That's a good call.
I don't know if you all saw Hush.
No, I've never seen Hush.
I think it's Katie Siegel, I think she's
because that was a Flanagan movie.
But yeah, part of the reason, I mean, to spoil Hush for anyone, she survives. The guy who invades her house dies because she kills him. But he could have gotten what he wanted and left, and he just wanted to play with this deaf woman. And that's kind of, and I felt that way kind of watching Wait Until Dark, was like, this could have been easier for them.
That sounds like a remake of this almost.
Yeah,
based on your description, you know. What's different about this one? She's deaf.
No, you don't understand. Yeah, different disability.
Yeah, totally different film.
Yeah.
But no, that sounds like a good one. I've heard very good things about Hush. And I hadn't seen Mike Flanagan's early stuff, but I've heard that Oculus is good as well. But Hush was one of those that was on the list when I started looking up home invasion films when we started doing this. And so I think that one's now, you know, on my radar. Maybe we need to repeat this kind of, maybe do a sequel to this.
Home Invaders Part 2, exactly.
Yeah, but we won't call it a Part 2 just for Jeremy's sake.
Oh,
We'll just say still home invading or something. Yeah.
I didn't think it's a common thing in home invasion movies. They want to like toy with the person there. Like that's like The Strangers is literally just 90 minutes of them toying with this
cat and mouse
couple that was just fighting with each other instead of, and then, you know, finally killing them. So it's always funny when they don't succeed, because it's like, well, you made it hard on yourself.
I think Rote, or whatever how the hell you say it. I didn't remember them even saying his name. Mr. Rote, which is Alan Arkin's character in this movie. Mm-hmm. He just took out everybody by the end, and he just tried to do this on his own and screwed up, right? He was like, you've served me enough. I'm just going to take you guys out. And the way he kills Jack Weston when he rolls over him in his car, that was the second like shocking moment in that movie, I thought. The first one being the girl in the body bag inside the closet. Oh, yeah. But then you see the car, and it's cut real fast. You just see some like quick cuts of the car. But then all of a sudden you see the guy's hat kind of come up. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're supposed to think that Alan Arkin was the one getting run over.
Right, yeah. But take him out. Go to the parking lot. Take him out. Yeah, right. You know.
Yeah.
But you see the body come up by the last time the car kind of pulls away, and like the hat comes up, and you just see a head. And I was like, damn, this was pretty raw for the '60s. I was like, that was a good one.
But just 4 years later, it gets a little more shocking.
Should we move into Straw Dogs since we both segued?
Sure.
That's probably a good one. Yeah. Into the release of Straw Dogs in 1971, which released in the same year as Dirty Harry, The French Connection, and A Clockwork Orange. Yeah. Was this the most violent year of films ever made?
Jeez, it feels like, I mean, definitely Clockwork Orange, you could see some, I mean, I don't know. Obviously, okay, so Straw Dogs, we're talking about here, I mean, it's really sort of famous. And I think the reputation of it is something that most people know, even if they haven't seen the movie.
Yeah.
And
they know of it.
They know of it. And it's a Sam Peckinpah movie. It's like his follow-up to The Wild Bunch, Dustin Hoffman. And it has some pretty brutal scenes in it, particularly a sexual assault in the middle of it. And it's interesting to kind of contrast it with Clockwork Orange, where there's also a lot of sexual assaults, but it's so in Clockwork Orange it's so surreal and, you know, funky and dreamlike, or circus, funhouse mirror, that it
like
doesn't
super deformed and
it doesn't feel as like raw and painful as it is in this one. This one is just a big
hard to watch
kick in the emotional balls.
Yeah, exactly. You have to cut those emotional balls off. Is that the segue to the next one already, or no? Not moving yet.
We've gotten through Straw Dogs in record time.
Straw Dogs. There's an assault. Let's move on. I saw this film a long time ago. I didn't remember any detail in it, minus what I know of, right, of the movie, of those certain assault scenes, and which there are 2 of them. But I think that they cut them down quite a bit in the American release of this. I'm not too sure exactly how they've been edited, and I've never seen the original version of this. But there was some parts of this film which I understand it's a classic, and I understand Peckinpah's very well known for this film, although I know he's really known for the Wild Bunch as well. But this one, they said that or at least what I'm reading, is like this is the one that he's really been known as like his cinema masterpiece. But there's a lot of unevenness to this film, and I don't know if you guys noticed this too, and mostly it was around Susan George and her performance. I wasn't totally on board with her relationship with David, with Dustin Hoffman.
Dustin Hoffman's character.
Yeah, and I felt like it was almost like she became testy with him, and he was a little condescending with her as well. I just think that it got pushed way too far on both sides, and that it kind of took me out of caring for her or being on their side, both of their sides, to be honest, because I didn't really like their kitchen sink stuff that was happening. It was almost a little bit like I don't really like this couple together, kind of thing.
No, that's interesting. I feel like this one, Straw Dogs and Hard Candy, kind of have a similar track, in the sense that there's not a lot of characters you're feeling a lot of sympathy for. You're just it's a lot of like brutality all around. I mean, I will say, obviously the Amy character I feel bad for multiple reasons, including the fact that so this movie, it sort of starts off with her, I think outside of the very opening title sequence, she's like the first character we really see, and it's that sort of close up on her braless sweater, and everyone,
we don't even see her face, right?
Yeah,
it's just
we don't even see her face, and everyone, every sort of like man, and then even the kids are all sort of leering at her.
Yeah,
which is it's wild, and so you're automatically like put in a place where you start to feel bad for her. And then, she has clearly this rocky relationship with her husband. The sort of table setting is that, she grew up in this remote countryside English town, and Dustin Hoffman, her husband, has some grant or whatever to
he's a star
study
nerd.
some
He's a space
mathematical
nerd. Yeah.
something or other, and is gonna
stellar structures.
Take a summer holiday in the country to research his paper or whatever he's doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we get there, and this is like just this like primeval awful place where everybody has this like insane predatory relationship with
it was
everyone
like a
else.
town of insane villainous men, and it was like every time you'd get a shot of a male, like a close-up or anything, it was always like really at a strange low angle, and they were always kind of like looking down, especially the crew that were working on their house. I mean, obviously those guys ended up being the real jerk-offs in this movie, but everybody, even the reverend seemed like a dick. Like everyone was just portrayed as like this nasty person.
Think about how the reverend was like belittling his wife. And when she's like,
that's what I mean.
Why don't you read that, you dumb bitch, or whatever he says? Like,
It really sets up all the males in the town as a villain, and everyone's kind of leering at both at Dustin Hoffman mostly, and you could tell that all the men don't like him and want to start shit with him all the time, and it's like he never gets ahead with them. The beginning of this really feels like the beginning of American Werewolf in London, and with the bar that the people go to, the Slaughtered Lamb, with David Naughton and God, I can't. I'm so bad with names when I'm on this fucking show. If I'm not on this show, I could tell you every name, every middle name of every actor in every world. Yeah. But the two main characters in American Werewolf in London, they end up going across the moors and they end up at this bar called the Slaughtered Lamb, where they are leered at, just like in this movie. And I'm wondering if Landis took a lot of the inspiration from that, because it really feels very similar to that film and how they set up that dread, or that initial dread.
Yeah. He also has nothing in common with anyone there. At all.
Nothing.
He's American. They're
British.
a
complete outsider.
They're drinking these pints of beer, and he's like, "I'll have the, the
Scotch
top
on the
shelf
rocks."
scotch."
Yeah. They're like, "Oh, fancy!"
They're all looking at him like this asshole
Right.
comes in here with,
I'd like a scotch double with ice.
I think the very first guy in the pub who sees him, like, looks down at his shoes and is like, that's not, comfortable tennis shoes. Working men don't wear that or whatever. And, there is certainly a lot of that throughout all this stuff where it's like, that also when the guys are like, hey, hang on, let's watch him, fuck up, driving the car on the opposite side or whatever. And
the stick shift, The other side, sir.
Yeah. There's all that kind of stuff. It's interesting. I was reading a little bit about some of this. Like, so a lot of the common critiques of the movie are that, like, Peckinpah is asserting that everyone has to assert their manhood by, through sort of a crucible of violence, the way that Dustin Hoffman does at the end of this. But what was interesting is, like, according to Peckinpah, like, biographers and Peckinpah himself, like, he wrote these different letters to critics, who basically said those exact same things, and he was, like, kind of responding to them at the time. He was basically saying, like, you didn't understand the film or whatever, and it's possible because the movie is very different from what we're used to, even with his own work. So the movie he did just before this, The Wild Bunch, it has, a lot of, amped up violence, particularly for the 60s.
Squibs.
Like
lots of squibs and
big,
blood.
nasty squibs, and, like the sort of, all the people who in sort of previous Western movies would have been the heroes, all, like, die these huge, horrible deaths. On sort of a suicide mission.
Mm-hmm.
And, it had a lot of his sort of signature action style, with a lot of those things being in, like, ultra slow motion. Just sort of reveling in the sort of horror of the violence. But apparently, to him, what he was trying to achieve in The Wild Bunch, he didn't achieve, which is that he wanted to make everyone feel uncomfortable and feel awful about the violence that's happening in The Wild Bunch. But instead, it's like, it feels sort of heroic and, or tragic that, these guys are on this, like, what do you call it? Like a sort of this doomed path. In Straw Dogs, if that's what he was going for, he definitely achieved it, where, you don't feel good. It's not like, in the 70s, perhaps in the later 70s, a lot of exploitation movies there was a whole genre of sort of thrillers that became known as the rape/revenge thrillers.
Yeah, like I Spit on Your Grave and House on Haunted, or Last House on the Left.
Thriller, A Cruel Picture, even one that we did, Lady Snowblood.
Yep.
It's like, and
that movie's awesome. Man.
It was it was all the things that sort of, like, inspired Tarantino with Kill Bill and all this. And there's this whole sort of subgenre where, this woman gets raped in the toward the beginning of the movie, and then the rest of the time is her going through creative ways to cut off balls and kill the people who wronged her. In this one, it's like, there's this horrendous sort of unblinking, awful, and explicit, sort of brutal and sweaty rape in the middle of it, a gang rape in the middle of this one. And, it's not as if the violence perpetrated by Dustin Hoffman at the end of this movie is sort of in revenge of that. He doesn't even know that it
know
happened.
about it. She doesn't tell him.
It's wild because, like, I think at a certain point, for me, it finally clicked with me, was after the insane rape scene, we get to the church scene a little later on, and we're seeing all this stuff from her perspective of, like, she sees all the townspeople, she sees the people who assaulted her, even watching the guy do his little magic show or whatever, she was having these flashbacks, whatever.
Yeah.
And the idea was we're kind of seeing a lot of this stuff through her perspective, even though Dustin Hoffman is
right,
the big star. His face is on the poster. One would think the movie's about him, but the movie's actually sort of about her, and how she goes from seeing her hometown as one way and then seeing it another way after this series of events. And I think that's a more interesting way to sort of read this movie. I don't think it makes it any more enjoyable, because part of the thing that separates it from the Wild Bunch is that you can't have any fun with this violence. This violence, like, you're really feeling the pain of it as an audience member.
Yeah, even the ending. I mean, even though when there's a bit of I guess justice being done when the townsmen are taken out one by Dustin Hoffman, one of those ways being throwing boiling oil on their faces outside of a window, which I thought was amazing, and also the bear trap on the head. I mean, was pretty wild, right?
When you're watching at the very beginning of the movie when they put it together, you're like, that's going to come into play
for sure. Yeah, a little foreshadowing, because it keeps like snapping back on it. Yeah. This is for the safety. We're going to put the safety lock on it. Yeah, now put it up on my wall. Yeah, sure.
I love how, for, I don't know, either dramatic purposes or, horror or whatever, the sort of first rapist gets his head caught in the trap at the end there. And even though it's fully closed on his head, he fights with it for quite a long time.
Yeah.
It seems like that would have, if it snapped his leg or whatever, that'd be one thing, but it got him right in the head and the neck. I think that's
done,
game over.
Right?
Yeah.
Game over.
And there's no like music or slow-mo or dramatic effect. He's just struggling with it in complete silence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, you actually, real quick, sorry, you reminded me, like, one of his sort of signature moves that then John Woo then took later on, and then, came back to influence sort of Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino in the 90s, was this thing where he would switch back and forth between, especially in the Wild Bunch, switch back and forth between sort of, real speed, 24 frames, and then high speed, like, slow motion. And in this one, Peckinpah used the slow motion to pretty gruesome effect. I mean, I think the first time we get to it is during the start of the gang rape scene, and like we see Susan George, the Amy character, get backhanded, and her reaction to the backhand was in this 120 frames, like slow motion, falling down. And that is sort of the perfect contrast of what I was trying to express earlier, was like that, like, whereas we see the sort of Mexican general and all the men at the end of Wild Bunch getting blasted in slow motion, and it's
Gatling guns and
just
nuts.
You can you can are having a certain degree of fun with it in spite of what he was trying to do. In this one, like, he was sort of accomplishing what he was setting out to do in the previous one, which
to make you feel awful.
Make you feel awful, and like the slow motion is to, like, also like hits you on a deeper level because you have to revel in it more.
How awful did you feel when the sheriff got blasted by that shotgun and they sent him up flying in the air in slow motion, you know?
Backwards.
Yeah, he kind of got. It's like he was launched off the ground, but still, he was like the one townsperson that was actually on David's side or on their side, and he got blasted. So he's like, they've got no protection now, and that whole scene made me feel awful. And usually, for those of you that listen to the show, you know that I love the violence. I love wild endings like this, you know. Yeah. But this one made me feel a little uneasy, and I still have a question as to why Charlie, the rapist number 1, shot rapist number 2 when he was trying to assault Amy yet again up in the room while all this madness is happening downstairs. And it was just like, I just got this like uneven feeling of like what their motivations were, I guess. And I'm sure it's just kind of, you know, a chaotic event and a chaotic moment and scene in the movie, and there's not much to read into, but that's kind of why I felt a little uneasy about the film, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's, you know, it is definitely achieving what he set out to achieve, if that's, you know, if all those accounts are true, which is that, like, it's not, you're not supposed to have fun with the violence in this one.
Yeah. I thought that with the sheriff getting blasted backward was an interesting moment to have the slow-mo, because it was just like, that was clearly when the wheels were going to fall off, because it's like now they're also murderers. I mean, they were trying to break in to murder this guy anyway, but you know, like, it's like once you've murdered the sheriff, it's just kind of like, what's another?
Those guys don't give a shit, man. They are nothing to lose. Yeah. And those guys were getting hammered during that scene, man. They were just taking down bottles of man. It was, I guess it was scotch, right? I think they were just drinking straight from the bottle of scotch, just getting blasted.
Listen to me. You know what happens if they get in there? They'll kill us all. They've gone too far to back down now. You understand that?
So what'd you think of this one, Chris? Is this one that you've seen before this discussion, or is this was this a new viewing?
No, I'd seen it before. It'd been a while. I didn't remember a whole lot. I mean, what stuck out this time, like, you know, like I said about David, was just that he just didn't have anything in common with these people, and you know, that kind of heightened the lack of trust, or the bad vibes that were there. But also, you know, I mean, his inaction kind of, I thought, was how the plot unfolded. He was afraid to confront these guys, and that's kind of set the stage for everything after that. Was that he was just not willing to be confrontational.
I mean, she used the word coward, right? I mean, she called him a coward, and he denied that he was. He does prove that he wasn't, I guess, by the end, but you're right, there was a lot of inaction that probably could have helped to avoid some of this stuff. Yeah. However, I think he was thinking more pragmatically about it and was like, hey, you know, they're just fucking with me. I'm another guy here, right? Kind of invading their territory, and they're just kind of busting my chops. Well,
got to take it on the chin, but, you know.
Right.
I feel like I feel like in a lot of these, like a pretty consistent theme of movies like this is like trusting your wife's instincts. Because a lot of these movies, like, it's like I don't really feel good about that. Like, I don't know if you all saw Speak No Evil. It came out last year. I think it's on Shudder, but it's like she's like, I don't know if we should go stay with these people. We've met them one time for a couple days. We're gonna bring our kid over there and stay in the middle of nowhere, and like, well, they invited us, so let's just go do it. And then I'll leave we
don't want to be rude.
Yeah,
but
it's better to be dead than rude. Yeah.
It's actually kind of the theme of the movie. But I thought the tagline for Straw Dogs on IMDb anyway says, David always dreaded the day he might have to defend his wife.
Oh, God.
Like, what? Really? He's dreading that day? Like, isn't that kind of
be a man, be a husband?
Responsibility?
Yeah.
what's funny about that is like, well, obviously, marketing teams, whatever, like aren't always in sync with some of this stuff. But like, what you're kind of reminding me of is like, earlier I was talking about like how like the movie is supposed to be kind of Amy's movie, the Susan George character. But that's true. Like, where it ends, like, I mean, Amy's just left at the house. I don't even remember the last thing we see of her. And then it ends with
he was driving
Dustin
David
Hoffman
Warner home.
Driving David Warner home, and he's like, I don't even know how to get home. And he's like, neither do I. Like,
I didn't get that either.
I didn't get it, and it was so, like you said, it was so weird. So he kills all these guys, and you think, all right, he finally, he crossed that threshold.
Yeah, like 6 or 7 times. Yeah.
But then he just leaves his wife in this house full of dead guys and broken glass and all this stuff.
Yeah,
and he's like,
rats.
well, let me make sure you get home safely. It logically didn't really make.
I think even interpreting the movie from Amy's perspective, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that way either. Because like, if it was from Amy's perspective, doesn't it seem like we should be finding out what she's up to?
What she's up to, yeah.
How she survived the night type of thing. But instead, because it ends on Dustin Hoffman, maybe that is part of the slash on the pod, the thing that like made it so that it was harder for the audience to, interpret the movie the way Sam Peckinpah intended it to be, which is that David and some of these other men were the thing that like he was criticizing or trying to bring low, because we're given David's like little poetic I don't know how to get home either moment at the end. It sort of makes it feel like, well, yeah, it was about David the whole time, and
yeah,
he needed to do this for himself. David got his groove back on this trip to England.
Like when was the shift though? When did he all of a sudden become, I don't know, Kevin McAllister from Home Alone? Like he had the place
Home Alone. Like got him boiling.
He had the place like, set up. Yeah.
It's like he decided he wasn't giving. I forgot the guy that was on the that they were trying to get. I forgot his name.
David Warner, Henry Niles.
Henry, yeah. Or is it John or?
John Niles was his dad. He was the crazy.
Okay.
Or the one that the crazy drunk big guy beat up in the farm.
Henry Niles was the one who like kind of Frankensteined.
Yeah,
that
the
young girl. Yeah.
Yeah. When he decided
very Lenny, right? From Of Mice and Men.
Yeah. Lenny or Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah, right. Like, yeah. Sent the girl down the I was gonna say young Frankenstein.
Young Frankenstein. You don't think I'm gonna do it, do you?
I guess he decides he's like just not. He's not gonna give them this guy back, and he's like, he tells Amy like they're gonna beat him to death. She's like, I don't care. Like,
kind of similar to our previous movie, right?
Yeah.
She wouldn't give up the doll. This guy wouldn't give up David Warner, right? David Warner, and it was like, well, why?
Yeah.
I mean,
it was I don't know. It seemed like just straight stubbornness.
And he did kill somebody, right? Like, so he probably should have been at least like confronted about that. I know that probably not in the best way that the townsfolk are going to handle it, but
but maybe it's related to the director's just general, like you were saying, the theme of the movie being that like a guy has to cross that threshold, and like he chose to do it in a situation where he really didn't have to.
The idea was that like in when the movie came out, critics were accusing him of having that philosophy.
Gotcha.
Critics were accusing Sam Peckinpah of having that philosophy. But he was adamantly denying that. And yeah, it is funny, like sort of what we're presented is that like, yeah, sort of Mice and Men style, or perhaps Frankenstein's monster. The David Warner character accidentally kills this girl. But the posse that wanted him dead didn't know that.
They just knew she was missing.
Yeah. Well,
no one knew she was dead, right?
No one knew that she was dead.
Right.
Like,
they
only
find
saw her with him leaving the church thing.
Right.
So yeah, the whole thing was it was very strange. And like and everyone goes 0 to 100 just on a dime without any evidence, and without knowing why they're doing it. And just like in this one, when it's like they blow away the sheriff, like the only person like he was like, oh, we're waiting until the police get here, and it's like, yeah, the only policeman was just killed. So,
yeah,
you're on your own now, buddy.
Oof.
Damn you, Head, and give me that gun. Damn you, Major. Let go!
And it's a fun little connection here. What was interesting was that, like, at one point when we're kind of seeing how Dustin Hoffman and Susan George's relationship it isn't going well. It's made clearer and clearer as it goes on, but actually from the very beginning, like, things aren't going well for them. But there's one point where he's like, kind of demeaning her, and he's like, oh, you act like you're 14, and she's like, I am. And so and then they get younger and younger in these ages because he's trying to call her an idiot or something. But it's funny that they started at the number that Elliot Page was supposed to be at in Hard.
That's right.
Candy.
She was 14.
Yeah.
Was that our segue to Hard Candy?
There you go.
Oh, before we do though,
yeah, please
mention the cat in the closet.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because I was thinking
Skipped
that
over
was
that
like
one.
when I thought about waiting, like you mentioned, the wait until dark, the reveal of her.
Yeah, exactly.
The dead body. That was what ramped up Straw Dogs. It's like they just come back, he opens the closet door, and then the cat's in there.
Right.
But the way he reacts to it,
he doesn't say what the hell.
He just sits there like this. He just shakes his head sitting on the bed.
He sees it. He sees it again, and then he goes and sits down. She's like, "What the hell was that?"
Closes the door.
Yeah.
She had a genuine reaction.
I kind of laughed during that scene because I just was trying to get inside his mind. Like, did he just sit down and think, maybe if I don't say anything, she will never open this closet door ever, and she won't look for this cat.
But I think that's an interesting point, right? And that kind of does go back to his character. If we don't deal with it, it might the problem might solve itself, kind of thing. And that's kind of how he was with the hoodlums working on his construction or on his garage or whatever the hell they were doing. He's like, oh, if we don't deal with it, they're gonna finish their job and we don't have to see him again. You're in a small rural town when these are the only people in it, man. You're gonna have to deal with it at some point, right? Unless you want to move, unless you want to go somewhere else, which she did suggest and he denied. So.
Right. They definitely they probably should have done that.
Yeah.
According to the end of this movie, I'd say, you should have moved.
My only theory on like the very end where he's like, I don't know my way home either, is that he doesn't know his way back to, like, he doesn't know how to become the person he used to be before he murdered.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's the only interpretation I really have of it.
Yeah, that's a good reading of that. I guess my only thing with that is, like, if the intent was supposed to be that he wasn't the protagonist, then, why give him that sort of character insight moment to end on? But I mean, I do agree that is a pretty good interpretation of that. But anyway, yeah, the cat thing is so funny that now that you brought it up, like, it's like, because we see Dustin Hoffman sort of antagonizing the cat early on, like throwing shit at
fruit
it,
at him,
and like you hear that, like, the cat get hit with grapefruits and whatever, and it's like,
he's an asshole too. Every man in this movie sucks.
Yeah, so it's like,
yeah,
and we don't find out, like, no one says, like, I'm gonna kill you like I killed the cat. Like, nobody, like, you have no idea who the fuck killed the cat.
No, we have no idea who did it.
The screenwriting book, Who Killed the Cat, it is giving bad advice on this one because we have no idea.
Not save the cat, who killed the cat.
You work as a photographer, you find out real quick. People's faces lie.
Does my face lie?
I look at those eyes and I see a girl who reads Zadie Smith, who listens to John Mayer and Coldplay, who desperately, madly, deeply wants, needs, longs for more chocolate.
Let's move on to Hard Candy.
Yeah, I was trying to find another segue.
Yeah.
It's a hard one to chew on. Kind of like Hard Candy.
I do have one somewhat interesting segue. One of the posters I found of Hard Candy is Elliot Page's character in full Red Riding Hood.
Yeah.
Red Riding Hood, the hoodie and the bag. But she's standing inside of a bear trap. And that was the one connection I had to Straw Dogs here.
Good call.
Yeah,
and that poster. This is the first time I've seen this movie. I was made aware of it at the time. Some friends of mine, they loved this movie poster, and they had it like hanging in their living room for a long time. And of course, they like the movie as well, but like the poster itself, like really like spoke to them or whatever. And like it is a really cool poster.
It's a great poster. I mean, outside of just the character of her, there's nothing really. I mean, I guess the bear trap is kind of a man trap in this one, and that's what she does to him. But it's more of a figurative.
Exactly. Like in the poster, like she's the cheese. For the man trap.
For the mouse or the right. Yeah, exactly.
The mouse man?
Yeah, that's.
I'm starting to lose the metaphor. No. Speaking of uncomfortable, like this movie too, like not just the nut chopping scene, but like every single scene in this movie is like, I think I think the opening coffee scene is incredibly uncomfortable.
Totally. From the start, it's cringeworthy.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think there's probably like 3 wide shots in the entire movie. Everything else is this really tight close up.
They could have been anywhere.
You don't know where they are, and like you're so like off kilter all of a sudden, and like or the entire time, and you kind of like don't know what's real, what's not for arguably for the whole movie, but for most of the movie for sure. And that presentation of like keeping things just like from chin to forehead for each of the characters, like it really has this way of putting you in an uncomfortable position the entire time as an audience.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure that the movie shouldn't make you feel comfortable. It's a really uncomfortable scenario that these people are in, which stemmed from news stories about Japanese girls who would lure businessmen to places with promises of, I don't know, sexual favors or even just, good conversation or whatever it is. But then they would beat the hell out of them and rob them and mug them. And it's like, they really took that and expanded it quite a bit in this movie. Yeah, I saw this back when it first came out. It must have been around when your friends had that poster on their wall. But seeing it again and kind of looking at it from this new Grindhouse lens, I agree with you. I felt like I was a little like lost in where things were. Clearly, that was probably a budget thing. Then they were trying to shoot up close and to get as much coverage as you can without having to spend a bunch on extras and big wide shots and things. But it definitely made you feel a little uneasy.
Totally.
Those close-ups.
Well, it definitely made you feel uneasy. But I don't know about the budget thing, because I mean, other than maybe the coffee shop, like we essentially are always in the same house. So this could all just like Wait Until Dark. This one could have been a stage play,
right? Yeah,
more or less, because it almost all takes place in this house.
Yeah, outside of the rooftop and Sandra Oh looking at that from a distance.
But. God, even the Sandra Oh scene where the first time we see her, isn't that shot where we see the sort of top of her head looking to see Elliot Page on the roof. But when we actually get the confrontation scene with Sandra Oh, like again, it's like tight close up to tight close up, tight close up to tight close up, and you're she like is handing Elliot Page the
Girl Scout cookies, right?
Girl Scout cookies or whatever, but you don't see it.
No, I didn't know what she was doing. She's like, "Can you pay for these?" And I'm like, "Pay for what?"
Yeah. I don't know if that would be the choice I would make there in the same position, but man, it definitely puts you in this place where you don't know which way is up or down, and you're definitely uncomfortable. Like your sense of space as an audience is so out of whack that you're already on the back foot for when all of the other horrendous things start happening.
Yeah, and it just gets worse, right? Like it just piles on itself. I mean, they're making screwdrivers, right? Vodka drinks with a 14-year-old, and there's no questioning that she's having one of these, right? Like it's like, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess this one was interesting because you know, for the longest time during the film, you don't really know if she's correct in her blaming him or accusing him of being this pedophile that she thinks he is, and that she thought that he was specifically killed. Mauer, I believe her name is something Mauer. She's on a missing persons poster for one brief second. You could see.
Yeah. In the coffee shop there.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, she's accusing Patrick Wilson of being the killer of this, but you don't really know what information she has. And it seems like she doesn't have any information because she's ransacking his whole apartment trying to find any sort of evidence, which she finally does, which we don't see. Another thing that we just are, you know, we have to kind of imagine what she sees, right? She kind of, well, this is the sick stuff that, you know, you don't want people to find, right? And blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, what was on those pictures? And they only show one of them, and I think it's the girl Mauer. However, it's like it gets into, by the end, he does admit to it, right?
She was like outside of the coffee shop, yeah, and then on the roof he says it was me and some other guy. But I didn't do any of the stuff. The other guy did.
But then Aaron told me you did before he killed himself. Is like her response.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, did she do the same exact thing to Aaron and make him kill himself just like Patrick? That's what I got out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, exactly. And
brutal ending, by the way. Jesus.
More or less like what they're describing. That Patrick Wilson and the unseen co-conspirator were up to. Essentially, it's more or less the straw dog scene, but with potentially someone who's a lot younger than Susan George was in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then afterwards, you know, one of them or maybe both of them might have killed this girl. All that is kind of unclear. But what was kind of interesting about the way they played it was especially the way it sort of ends. And he's like, "Who are you? Who are you?" And she's like,
It's hard to say for sure. Maybe not a Calabasas girl.
Maybe not even a friend of Donna Mauer.
Maybe not even named Haley.
and then Elliot Page says like, you know, I'm just everybody who's ever been, you know, molested or this or that, and it has this whole speech. And in that moment, like, and especially like after at the very last shot, I think we see of Elliot Page, like, you know, throwing the hoodie up and walking away, like it made me kind of think like, okay, this person may not be real or whatever. It's like either a manifestation of sort of Patrick Wilson's, you know, sort of guilt and all of that self-loathing and whatever, or you know, it's that if it wasn't the manifestation of the guilt, it was, you know, perhaps not a real person. You know what I mean? It was like some sort of like the avenging creature. Yeah.
I thought, like, when I saw her kind of walking off, putting the hood up, what it signified to me was like, all right, on to the next predator.
Yeah,
like,
she's like
I
Batman,
thought of
right?
it as more, she's just going to continue this.
Yeah.
You know, her mission is
an anti-hero or a vigilante hero that's taking out all these pedophiles, and like you said,
but
here's the next one.
knowing all of the secrets of this guy and previously and the other guy potentially seemed supernatural to me,
because she wouldn't know all that stuff. You
like
mean
how they didn't sort of like have a plausible explanation of how Haley got that information,
right?
And so it made it sort of feel like this you know, this person was sort of cosmic justice or something else, you know.
Now, we had an elaborate scheme in our first film that we talked about, Wait Until Dark. Talk about an elaborate scheme in this movie, right? You've got
totally. I mean,
full
the first half of
psychological
this is
torture
like
the whole
a
time.
con job,
yeah,
the way that it was in Wait Until Dark.
Right, yeah. And this one, I mean, she had him down with ice on his balls, making him think that he's being castrated by playing a castration movie on VHS, making it seem like she's shooting in real time with the camera that's sitting there. I mean, talk about screwing with someone's head, you know? And she had all the tools that you would need for kind of an Avenger, right? Like a person that's avenging all this stuff. She's got the the weapons. She's got a big book of medical information or anatomy or whatever, so she could take out these guys in a systematic way. She's also got a stun gun.
Yeah.
She's got these bloody
an arsenal.
plastic tubes that were sitting on the counter too.
Yeah.
Like whatever that fake blood was, or was it real blood? It's like,
right.
Yeah, get the fuck off of me! Please untie me and let me go! Please! Please don't cut me! Please! Please!
Because the movie's a little vague with some of that, like it leaves, a good amount of interpretation there. Which makes it kind of interesting. I kind of thought, speaking of interpretations, it's interesting to hear that, it's sort of based on this Japanese story of, or multiple stories of people, sort of robbing these guys or whatever they did. But to me, it's like this movie came out in 2005, and it felt sort of very much in the wake of 9/11. And like at that time, there was a lot of sort of ambient just fear around things that, seemingly had no motivation. And, it just kind of created this like specter of like, well, you're able to just believe certain things like that because, everyone just sat through like watching this thing happen for, what we were told was no reason. And I feel like around that time that there was a lot of sort of like stories in the news about, different child molesters and this or that. Right. And like this movie kind of embodies some of those fears, but then, flips it on its head where it's like, it takes the fear of like this person will, commit violence against your children for no reason. And, or like, even this safer, upper, nice house and upper class neighborhood, that person will be, snatching kids and doing crazy stuff with them. And then, taking it so that this person is being punished for all that stuff, which until the very end there, you're not really even quite sure if any of that was true.
She could have been wrong.
Yeah. But what was great was like that all the stuff that was being done to him was sort of what to like soften him up psychologically to get there to admit it.
Because the one thing that she wanted out of him was the admission. And she kept pushing for him to admit guilt and to confess to doing this. And she kept saying, just do it. And then her next motivation was for him just to kill himself, which now, thinking back from what you're saying, makes me think that, yes, this might have been in Patrick Wilson's head. And this just might have been this long, I guess, thought process leading him to finally kill himself, because of the guilt that he's been feeling from this horrific act.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, 2005 was also like kind of the height of like the instant messaging era before like social media and like Facebook and all that kind of caught on.
Yeah.
So there were kind
predators.
Of stories of predators in chat rooms and having them meet up with people and stuff like that. So because that's how they meet up at the beginning. I think isn't the opening shot just their
IM window or
their IM window. So yeah, I think that was part of it too.
But that was exactly when I felt unease, like right with that conversation, the way that they were talking to each other, and it was just that really creepy, I need to go take a shower, take me with you, or something like that. Like it's so disgusting, and then it just starts drilling into you how like uncomfortable it makes you feel, and it almost just keeps testing you until it gets literally to the most uncomfortable part, which is the castration. How uncomfortable can you get? I mean, or how more uncomfortable can you get? I mean,
well, and she's not like her attitude about it is just so it's like she's just like trying to like fix her phone or something like that. Like it's just so like she's just so cavalier about what she's doing, and like she's just like she's playing Operation on like So
I did like the mixture of different frame rates and shutter speeds and things that they did. They really pushed a lot of the action and some of the violence and things that. And it really wasn't like that in-your-face violent. They didn't really show a ton. It wasn't Straw Dogs, and there weren't squibs going off all day, right? Or anything like that. There weren't any man traps or bear traps going on people's heads. But, there was a lot of suggested violence, which I think is, even stronger sometimes. And it was interesting because the suggested violence was also in the narrative and she was just suggesting that she was what she was doing to him. And so I thought that was really interesting how they did that. And I don't know. I like David Slade's movies. Well, I've only seen his short film in
Nightmare Cinema.
That I know of him, but I really liked that one. That was probably my favorite one of that series. So
this way to Egress. Yeah,
that was really good.
It was really good. What was interesting, you like, so we were talking about like the uncomfortable situation with all these close-ups, and particularly during the castration or the fake out castration scene, because they're not even showing you what's on that videotape, and we have no idea, like I don't even think we get a lot of the sort of squelchy sounds and whatever. You're just that much more uncomfortable because it's a lot more about Patrick Wilson, so squealing and screaming and like sweating and snot coming out of his nose and stuff like that, and it puts you off guard in a way that perhaps even just showing it very explicitly and torture porny would not have accomplished.
I agree. Which is interesting because this is around the time of like the Saws and things like that, when they were showing all that torture porn.
Yeah.
So this movie kind of fits in with that, but it does it on more of a, I don't know, more of a sophisticated, sophisticated level.
Like it does it with its pinky up, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
Like in Old Boy, right? Like they say, like your imagination's worse than reality, kind of.
Now there's an uncomfortable movie.
Yeah. It would fit right into with this block, I guess, or the last two of these movies.
Yes, this is Lieutenant Haley, LAPD. You're acquainted with a photographer, one Jeffrey Culver? Yes, there's been an incident here. Is it possible that you can assist us? I'm not at liberty to discuss that at this moment, ma'am, but it's a very delicate matter, and the sooner we can speak with you here, the better chance we have of keeping it out of the newspapers.
So, was this a first for you, Jeremy, right? Seeing this one? Chris, same?
For Wait Until Dark and Hard Candy, I hadn't seen those. I saw Straw Dogs when I was in high school. Like, I saw Wild Bunch, and I was like, oh, that was fucking awesome. What else has this guy done? Watched Straw Dogs. Maybe I don't need to watch his other movies.
Chris, have you seen? You said you saw Hard Candy before this show.
Pretty recently, like maybe like a year ago or so.
For the first time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you think? I mean, is this one that fits in with all these? I think pretty well. It's not so much a home invasion though, right? Because he invites her in, but she definitely invades.
It's vampire
home.
Rules invasion. Yeah. You have to be invited in. Yeah.
You have to invite us in.
Yeah, as a home invasion, it's what wouldn't be my first ever home invasion movie, but it is in his home with an invited guest, but a guest that he probably wanted to leave at some point.
Yeah.
Well, he thought he had home field advantage the whole time, but he didn't.
Yeah, he did not.
Yeah.
And in that sense, it fits in with all these home invasion ones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He isn't really kind of explicitly defending his home in the same way as the other ones, but in a sense, his home, it's like paying homage to himself, right? Because he has all of his work up everywhere,
right.
And it's all fancy, it's all reflective of his job and what he does, and he works out of his house, and so he's in a sense, he's like defending his reputation or who he thinks is his identity throughout the movie as she keeps trying to make him confess.
And that's essentially like the motivation that makes him step off the roof at the end there, right? Speaking of slow-mo shots. Yeah. And it's like, it's him trying to last ditch, maybe I can maintain my reputation after death. Snap. Maybe not. Or whatever she says.
Yeah, it's like,
or
not.
Yeah, or not. Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off. What were you saying?
I guess he's defending, if you view his home as kind of just symbolically representing him, like he is defending his home in a sense.
If your home in this instance are your testicles and your genitals, he was definitely trying to defend them, yes.
Yeah.
What's the tagline for this one, actually? I'll look it up.
Yeah. Got balls?
Never wanted to. Yeah, he never wanted to defend his balls, but strangers shouldn't talk to little girls. Okay, I guess that's.
Really? Is that the tagline?
Yeah,
Wow.
It's pretty good.
Better than Straw Dogs, yeah.
Or not.
Chris, thanks so much for joining us today. Why don't you tell us about what you've got going on? I believe you have something to plug.
Yes, I run a movie website called cupofteacritiques.com where we review movies, TV shows, and short films, and we kind of pair them with these tea flavors that have like the same psychosomatic effect that the movie does.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, and so we do that. We also have trivia on there and crossword puzzles on there.
Nice.
So yeah, it's pretty cool. We'd love for anyone who's interested to check it out. Cupofteacritiques.com.
Excellent. And then are you guys on social too? Should they follow you there? Is it the same?
Yes, on Facebook we're Cup of Tea Critiques. On Letterboxd we're COT Critiques, all one word.
We will definitely tag you in our posts for this episode.
Appreciate it.
All right. Next time on the show, we will be talking Dracula with 3 L's. We'll be bringing back our good friend of the show, Bruce Civily, to discuss 3 Dracula films. He's an expert in Dracula, has written literally the book on Dracula.
Literally the book.
We've got Dracula from 1931, the Bela Lugosi classic. Horror of Dracula.
Yeah.
No, what's that one?
Yeah.
Horror of Dracula from 1958 and Dracula from 1979. This is Lugosi, Lee, and Langella is how we're making this one work with the Dracula. So we are so crafty, aren't we?
So crafty. Yeah. It'll be pretty exciting. I haven't seen the other 2. I've definitely seen the Bela Lugosi one, but not the other ones. And Horror of Dracula apparently is also just Dracula, but it depends on which market it is and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, it'll be a lot of fun diving deep into Dracula with the expert on Dracula.
Yeah, we're literally watching Dracula, and Dracula.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
We've moved on.
All right, thanks so much for listening. Please make sure to subscribe and follow us on all the podcasts and social platforms at the Grindhouse Institute. And if you really want to give us a boost, check us out on Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps us to get noticed. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll be back next time.
Ciao.
I don't know my way home.
It's okay.